Cycles are things that go around. The simplest kind of cycle is a circle. If you go around a circle, you complete a cycle and end up where you started. There are all kinds of cycles. Bicycles, monocycles.
All right.
What other kinds of cycles are there? And what happens to the water in your pee after you go to the toilet? Well, it goes through the sewers and probably into a river and down the river and into the sea. And then what happens?
Today's experiment is going to have to do with the water cycle. Now here are the ingredients. Plastic wrap, the cup, the bowl, an ice cube, and hot water. Alright, step 1. Put the cup in the bowl, and then you pour the hot water in the bowl, right here. Of course you already see it evaporating. Alright, now you put the saran wrap on. Put it tightly around the bowl, like this. Alright, so then you put the ice cube on. Top right over the cup. Here's the hot water down here. You can pretend this is the sea. Plastic wrap up here is the atmosphere. And there's going to be an ice cube on top right over the cup in the middle. So I think you see that. So what's happening with the water is that the sea has water vapor evaporating into the atmosphere, and it's condensing on the top. And then the ice cube, I think when it hits the ice cube, it'll precipitate into the cup. And yeah. Alright, do you see the ice cube? Yep, there it is. You can see water condensing under the ice cube. And then when enough water will gather, it'll precipitate into the cup, known as the land. So what's really happening is the heat of the sun, right there, warms up the ocean. You could pretend this is the ocean. And then the warm water evaporates and meets the cold air. And, well, the ice cube is making cold air. And it condenses when it meets the atmosphere. So when the condensation, when it gets heavy enough, it precipitates down to Earth again. And then you can just pretend this is the lake, and it will precipitate over into the lake. So I took off the saran wrap, and I took out the cup, and now this is how much water precipitated into the lake. See? And that's the end of our water cycle experiment.
Kay's experiment is a nice model of what happens on the whole planet. Water evaporates. It doesn't have to be boiling hot. Kay had hers boiling hot just so that her experiment would happen quickly. You can try it for yourself. Just leave a saucer of water out before you go to bed, And when you wake up in the morning, all the water will be gone. Even though it's not hot, it's evaporated. And that's what the sea does. The sun makes the water evaporate. And when it gets high into the air, that air is a lot colder. So Kay used an ice cube to make the plastic simulate or model the upper atmosphere where the air is much colder and the water condenses into clouds. And she had tiny little clouds on the underside of the plastic. Now when the clouds get full, so full, and they get high enough that the condensation can collect and form little blobs big enough to fall down, that's called precipitation. And another word for precipitation is rain. So it rains back onto the land and runs down rivers into lakes and is reservoirs, water reservoirs, and then the water company takes the water from the reservoirs and pipes it to your house and you drink it, and some of it you use for your body's processes, but a lot of it you pee out again and the cycle goes around again. That's why it's called a water cycle, because it comes out of you, into the sea, up into the air, back down onto somebody's head, into them, out of them, back into the sea, round and round and round and round. It's a cycle. Very nice experiment, Kay. Can you think of any more cycles? How about the cycle of day and night? Or how about the cycle of the year, starting in January, going round to December, and starting again in January, going round and round and round. There's another cycle too, the cycle of the moon, going around the earth. How long does it take the moon to go around the earth? The moon rotates completely around the celestial sphere once in about 27.3 days. However, the way the moon looks to us in terms of its different phases, full moon, crescent moon, new moon, crescent moon, and back to full moon, that period, that cycle of the moon takes 29.5 days. And this is called a synodic month by astronomers. 29.5, quite close to 29. Now why would people living 37,000 years ago be so interested in the length of the synodic cycle of the moon that they would write it down on a bone in Limbobo? What's special about a month apart from the moon? Well, the origin of the word moon comes from, the English word moon, comes from the Latin word mensis. And mensis is something to do with a month. And there's something else to do with a month that is of great significance to human beings now, just as it was 37,000 years ago. Something to do with mensis.
I know what it is.
Something that all girls go through. You have it once a month. It's a natural process. It enables you to have children. She took my line away.
All girls are born with a special place in their bodies where babies can grow, called the uterus. It's in the lower abdomen below the stomach. As a girl matures, a special lining of blood and tissue periodically forms in the uterus to make a soft, nutritious place for a baby to grow. If a baby is not conceived, the velvety lining isn't needed, and so it is released and flows out of the body through the vagina, from the uterus to the outside of the body. That's menstruation. Menstruation is a very important part of human life. Every girl has 2 ovaries containing thousands of microscopic egg cells. About once a month, one of these cells matures and is released from one of the ovaries. It enters the fallopian tube and travels slowly to the uterus. We've greatly enlarged the size of the egg cell here so that you can see it. If the cell reaches the uterus without having been fertilized by a male sperm cell, the egg and the special lining built up in the uterus disintegrate and flow through the vaginal canal out of the body. The actual flow is rather small, and it lasts only about 3 to 8 days. This time is often called the period. Then the process begins all over again and repeats itself about once a month.
Compared with the fast pace of technological development that we've seen over the past 200 years or so, human evolution proceeds relatively slowly. So the people that were living 37,000 years ago were every bit as intelligent as we are today. So they probably did notice that the length of the moon cycle was the same as the length of the female cycle. And the women of 37,000 years ago would have experienced the same symptoms that women of today experience as they approach their menstruation. They get a bloated feeling in the middle area, stomach area, and it actually swells up a little bit. And you'll notice that the moon swells up once a month. It goes around and then shrinks again and then swells up again. So it's possible that ancient people thought the moon was a woman.
No, I don't believe you.
You don't believe me? I can't believe you don't believe me. Open your eyes and look. No, better still, close your eyes and try to imagine you were living 37,000 years ago. There were no telescopes. There was no Newton's theory of gravity, none of that. All you could see was this silver sphere floating around the night sky. Sometimes it was thin and sometimes it was fat. Every month you could see the cycle if you watched it day after day. And you'd be able to see it clearly because there wouldn't be all the lights of the city in the way like there are today. So think about it. So it's possible that ancient people thought the moon was a woman. Well, we don't know this for sure, but there is some evidence from discoveries made in Northern Europe that this might indeed be the case.
Site in and of itself has a very prominent place in the landscape, and we think it would have been used very early on in the settlement history of the Org nation.
Here they are looking in the site, in the caves at Holy Fels in northern Germany. And this is what they found there. Doesn't look much, but it may be very significant.
The discovery of the female figurine from Hohlefels is really revolutionary in the field. It's the earliest find of this kind that we have anywhere, and it really changes our image of how people viewed their world about 35 or even 40,000 years ago.
I think culture and art was an important part of the life during that time, and so I think that gives us a very good view about the people, and maybe we see them much closer to art.
There are actually hundreds of figurines similar to this that have been found. This one is special because it's the oldest one. It's been dated to about 37,000 years ago. It was carved from the ivory tusk of a woolly mammoth, an animal that has long since gone extinct. The people of those days would have been capable of carving a more realistic human figure if they wanted to. But the artist that made this, and others like it, chose deliberately to emphasize the roundness of the stomach and the swollen breasts. Both are signs of pregnancy. This is a pregnant woman statuette figurine. Writing wasn't invented. It wouldn't be invented for another 30,000 years at least. So we don't really know whether the people of Limpopo in Africa and the people of Germany at around about the same time thought that the moon was female, but it seems pretty likely. Certainly there's some evidence that 34,000 years later in Egypt they did. This is a bronze statuette of the Egyptian goddess Isis, who was associated with the moon and was, in their belief system, Isis was the mother of Horus, the little baby that she's nursing. And Horus is the sun god. So the Egyptians thought that the moon was the mother of the sun. There's more. There's more to the story, but that's enough for now. See you next time. Bye.